Oh, try to cram into my little corner here without getting hooked. All right. I think the lighting's good. What is up, guys? We are back again for another Tight Splice podcast here. At least that's what I'm calling it. Anytime I'm sitting at this desk with the microphone, I'm pretty much just labeling this as a podcast because, well, that's the only thing I know how to call it. When I started doing these podcasts, this was something I envisioned doing like once a month, and obviously posting 4 or 5 fishing videos between each one. But I just don't have time to go fishing anymore. And so I do apologize for just the amount of podcasts I'm throwing on you guys. Some of you guys say you love it. I appreciate you guys listening and watching. And to be quite honest, the only reason I'm doing this one right now is because I am sitting in my house going stir crazy. I typically do these at like 10:30 at night. Breezy goes to bed, the baby's down, and I just say I'm just going to go talk to the camera for a little bit. But it's like 10:30 in the morning, and I haven't been on the lake in 2 days. I actually had to cancel yesterday's trip due to wind and weather, and I had to opted to cancel today's trip due to weather as well, and mainly because is it fishable outside? As I look out my window, it is, but I just didn't feel right taking somebody's money when I knew it would be a waste of time, and we'll kind of get into why it would be a waste of time in a minute when we get into when we kind of get into it and what we're going to talk about today, I guess. So I was off yesterday. It was not wet. It was not rainy. It was just blowing 35 miles an hour out of the northeast. It was just a sloppy mess. And my customer actually lives in the town of Okeechobee or something, I believe. So I said we could reschedule. Sat at home, got all kinds of stuff done around the house, was nice and productive. Was excited to go to work today and ended up having to cancel today. So now I'm just going stir crazy, and I want to go fishing in the worst way and film some kind of actual fishing content. But it's just, I guess, not in God's plan. I mean, it is torrentially downpouring right now, and it's blowing sustained. It's blowing 25. And what's even worse is it said it was supposed to blow out of the east. It's blowing out of the northeast in the middle of April. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, so I'm just kind of sitting here like I got to put some kind of content out. So this is what you guys are going to have to deal with. So this is going to be kind of a podcast, but I haven't done like a lake update. I haven't done a fishing report. I haven't done what I foresee happening in the next couple of weeks on Lake Okeechobee. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about, and some other things as far as just like with me guiding and things like that I just kind of want to mention. So for the record, we have not had rain. Now, we are in South Florida, like the rain capital of the world. We have not had rain down here since the day before Christmas, I believe. I believe it was Christmas Eve that nasty front came through. And and here's what's kind of going on. We're going to talk about weather here for a minute. When I say no rain, I mean I truly don't believe we've had a drop of rain in our area at all. And I mean that. Where typically this is our dry season anyway, but what happens is we get these cold fronts that come across, and they drop an inch or two of rain, or sometimes if it's a bad front, it'll rain for an hour or two. But by the time the front makes it all the way down here to our region, it's usually just kind of a small line, and we'll get cloudy weather. It'll drop some rain, and then a lot of dry, cold air follows. And then a lot of times, once that wind switches out of the east-southeast, it'll warm up after a few days. We'll get some showers. And more than likely, the way our winters work is we get another front within another week, and it drops a little bit of rain. So we don't get a lot of rain, but at least it keeps the ground saturated, or not saturated. That's even, but just it doesn't make it bone dry. We've only had I think we had 3 cold fronts all winter, and severe cold fronts anyway. And they were bad ones. They dipped down below freezing, but it was just a hot winter, and we just never got any rain. So the water temp has been climbing like crazy all winter. I mean, I don't know even what it is right now, but I know it was in the mid 80s. And it has been so dry down here. I mean, any of you that fished with me this winter, you guys saw how disgusting my boat was. And it wasn't even with like mud, it was just like a fine film of ash, soot. And, I mean, if I could pan around right now, guys, like I'm looking out my back window here, and I could see 3 miles across cane fields, and the same as in my front yard. So when they're harvesting sugar cane down here, if we get the normal amount of rain, it's dirty, but the amount of dust and just soot in our yard and on all of our vehicles and our boats, it's terrible. So the reason I'm even going about that is this is the first bit of rain we've had since December, and April 12th today. And we had rain on Easter Sunday, I believe we had some. And then it's just been really kind of sprinkling here and there. But today, I mean, since I woke up, it has just been a steady rain, which makes for great fishing, in my opinion. Like, we all have rain, which, real quick, side note, anyone who can recommend a good rain suit, I don't have like a rain suit sponsor or anything, but I do need to invest in some new rain gear, especially for the upcoming months because we're getting into our rainy season. Let me know. But anyway, I do have rain gear. I usually encourage my customers to bring rain gear this time of year if they have it for this reason. I mean, we get a lot of rain, but the rain, there's no lightning in it. This is just like it's supposed to be like this for, I think, the next couple of days. Actually, tomorrow, I think it drops down. But rain isn't an issue to fish in. Okay, I always say the fish are already wet, and a lot of times it's the better days to go. But this wind it's been a windy winter already, and even, a lot of times our wind comes from cold fronts. We'll get a really hard northeast wind for a day or two following a cold front, and then it gradually dies down and almost slick off a lot of times for 3 or 4 days at a time. And because we never got those fronts, we just been having a lot of windy days over the last 3 months. And now we're in April, where the wind is supposed to be dying down, and any wind we do get is typically, 5 to 10 out of the south or southeast, blowing that, that warm air. And I fished on Monday, I guess it was, and it's blowing 25 out of the northeast. And then yesterday it was blowing legit 30 to 35 here. Unsafe to go out. And then today it said it was supposed to gust to the same, and it's blowing good. But, like I said, so I didn't cancel today because of the rain. I canceled because of the wind. And here's the deal with the wind on this lake, especially right now. So in the wintertime, November through February, typically the water's up, all right, a little bit, and we're in spawning time. The Lake Okeechobee is its own ball game because fish kind of do the polar opposite is what they traditionally do throughout the rest of the country. I believe I've said this numerous times, but I believe, throughout the country, when it gets cold, the fish push out offshore and they kind of get in that deep water. And then as it gets warm, they kind of come to the bank. And here's the complete opposite. The cold weather actually brings them in. And I don't know if that's in preparation to spawn on that warming trend following the front or what it is, but it's just the way it typically works. On top of that, you can't fish on the outside anyway because it's usually blowing and the water's turned up from the nasty winds and it's just unfishable. But you get back into the marshes where the fish spawn, and there's all the submerged grass that filters the water, and that's where we do most of our damage fishing. So even in the high winds, you could typically get back in the marsh where you're protected. Okay, you're not fishing in 2-foot rollers. It's calm. The water's clean, and the fish are back there. There is always a group of fish in the back, whether you're on the shoal, whether you're down in South Bay, whether you're up on the north end of the lake. Anywhere up there, there's always going to be a group of fish that are up shallow, and they're going to rotate throughout the winter, fish moving in and out. Right now, because we've had such a warm winter, and now we're getting into summer, we don't have spring. All right, it just kind of goes right into summer, and the water level is dropping. It's even the fish that want to be shallow, they're kind of being forced to go out with the dropping water. But I always say this time of year, you have 80% of the fish that move to the outside edge. Okay. And out in the open water, out on the outside grass line. And then you have 20% that are going to stay shallow, that are usually big fish to feed on bluegill. Well, typically by now, we've already just passed our first full moon in April. We typically are seeing bluegill activity, bluegill on beds, bluegill up shallow, even if they're not bedding, just kind of lingering around. And then you're fishing for those really big, lone, rogue, post-spawn fish, bass that are up there to feed on them bluegill, which is my favorite fish to fish for, my favorite time of year. I've said it numerous times. But we are not finding any bluegill activity. I mean, I've talked to a lot of guys and no one's really finding it. I'm sure it's happening somewhere, but not to the extent it typically is by this time every year. So I think a lot of those fish are just saying, well, there's no reason to be shallow. I say it all the time. That last tournament me and Breezy won back in September, we were fishing 96-degree water, and the water was literally only 12 inches deep. So you might ask yourself, why does a bass want to live in boiling hot, shallow water? They don't want to live there, but that's where the food was. There was giant bluegill beds. So they're only going to be there if they have a reason to be there. If the bait ain't up there, I just feel like they're not going to be, they just don't want to live that shallow if there's no bait. Most of the bait is on the outside edge. It's in dirtier water. And when we're talking about bait, we're mainly talking about shad. And the small amount of bluegill activity that I've found on the lake has been more towards the outside. Now, what does that mean? That means if the bait's on the outside and the fish are on the outside, you kind of need to fish the outside or more towards the outside. Well, you can't fish more towards the outside when it's blowing 25 miles an hour. So instead of taking my customers the past 2 days to go lay up and sit somewhere and, in my opinion, just do something where I personally don't have confidence that A, we're going to get a lot of bites, or B, that there's a chance at a really big fish. I just don't have confidence in it. So I can't take paying people out there to sit where I don't have confidence fishing. I just can't do it. So I just said, let's just reschedule. Like I said, if it was raining like it is right now outside, you guys keep seeing me. I'm not even looking at the camera. I just keep watching this rain because I haven't seen it in 4 months. I'd be all about it. I mean, I'd be like, yeah, we're going. And, here's the deal. At the end of the day, when it comes to my guide trips, it's kind of, in a weird way, like, it's kind of my call. All right. So, and this goes both. Well, let me get into this first. So if it was raining like this and just 8-mile-an-hour winds, I'd be all about it. But now at the same time, it's also hard because it blew 35 all day yesterday. So that outside edge water is going to be, or the water where I believe most of the fish is going to be unfishable. It's going to be chocolate soup. So now it's kind of like, okay, well, even if it was fishable today, like I can't go fish in that nastiness. Now the wind's supposed to switch out of the east-southeast today, which on the north end of the lake is going to dirty up the outside edge. But down here on the south end of the lake, that outer mid-range stuff's going to start to clean up. So, tomorrow I'll be fishing out there, no problems. So here's the deal. Like when it comes to my trips, it's my call, and that's a double-edged sword. All right. So most of you call, you leave a deposit with me for a date. Okay, if we were going to have this weather that we're having right now, off and on rain showers, and it's going to blow 5 miles an hour, no lightning, no anything like that, we're going. Okay, it is perfectly fishable. If not even being perfectly fishable, it's actually the desired this time of year conditions. I plan on going. If you don't want to go because you don't want to get wet or whatever, I can't help that. So, I get people that say like, oh, well, can we refund my deposit? No, because there were 30 other people that I know that would have been excited to go in this conditions. You see what I'm saying? Like, I can move your deposit to another date, but because you don't want to get wet, I can't help that. Now, if it was supposed to be, I'm going to do the right thing. I don't want anyone to make this seem like I'm trying to be a sleazeball and rip people off. That's not what I'm doing. I lived in Florida my entire life. I understand the weather down here, and I know when it's safe to go and not safe to go. Yesterday, no there was no rain. It was just wind. Half the reason I didn't go is because I knew we weren't going to be able to fish where the fish were. And the other thing is safety. I mean, this lake gets nasty, and we lose a person or two a year or a season out there due to a boat wreck, drowning, hypothermia. It's nasty. So it also becomes a safety issue, and that reflects back on me. So if I feel like it's unsafe to go, we're not going to go. And you, the customer, cannot help that nor predict that. So on a day like today, this is like almost like some kind of a front. It's off and on downpour, and there's no lightning, there's no anything. It's just you're going to be wet. This is fishable conditions besides the wind. Okay. Now, let's just say we were still in the backwater. I had fishable fish, this and that. I know where fish are. The conditions are actually going to make them bite. Just because it's raining, no, you cannot. I don't plan on canceling a trip. But if it's blowing 30, like a monsoon like this, then yes, it's not safe. It's not, what's the word? It's not efficient. Okay. There's a high possibility that it's just going to be a slow bite and we're not going to be able to fish efficiently, and it's just not going to be a good day. So I don't want to waste your time. And there's just a lot of different scenarios. So wind, okay, 15-mile-an-hour wind. I've had people want to cancel because it's supposed to be windy. Well, there are times, depending on the direction or the time of year, where the wind enhances the bite. Like a lot of you, well, I don't care. You can't get back there now, and everyone blew up. But like Moonshine Bay, right? Well, you can't get into Moonshine Bay now, but I guide in Moonshine Bay a lot during the wintertime. A lot. For a couple of reasons. One, it's protected. It's always clean water. Okay. And B, a lot of you watching this have seen this firsthand. The days where it is blowing, like you can't fish the main lake, that is when you want to be in Moonshine Bay. I can go to Moonshine Bay on Monday and catch 25 pounds in there on a guide trip, and the next day not go in there at all because the wind's not blowing. That is what not only makes the majority of the fish bite in there, but that's when I catch my big fish in Moonshine. The wind helps it. So when I look at my radar for the next day, it says it's going to blow 15 to 20, but I can get you and us into that area of water safely, whether I put it in Harney Pond or run through the Monkey Box, or I put it in Clewiston and go through Cochran's, whatever's going to be the best way to do it. Once we get in there, we're safe. We're fishing very, very productive water, and we have the best conditions you can ask for. Just because it's windy, like I've had people say, well, I don't want to go. I mean, it's supposed to blow 15 miles an hour. I can't help that. If you want to not cancel, if you want to cancel your trip, I can't refund your deposit because it's going to blow a little bit. I mean, if it's fishable, we're going to go. Now, at the same time, like I said, if it's God's honest bad conditions, I will cancel trips. I will do it. Like I'm going to do the right thing. Or I'll move your day. Here, perfect example, and I've said this before. The day Christmas Eve, I was supposed to run a trip, and we literally had a polar vortex blowing through. Like it was going to be nasty. It was supposed to blow 40, torrential downpour, and it was going to drop down below freezing. All right. So not only is that going to be a bad fishing day, but it's unsafe to go. Like it's just not what you want to do. So I called my customer and I moved them to the day after Christmas, which I had off. Now, that day turned out to be just as miserable. Like it was still blowing 30. It was just it was the high was 42. Okay, the high of the day was 42 degrees. At we didn't meet until 10:30 in the morning. And it was raining. It was raining. It was still blowing 30. It was freezing cold. And I called them that morning and said, "Listen, again, safety thing because it was blowing out of the northwest isn't that big of a deal, but this is going to be a very slow day." Again, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I can't sleep at night knowing like I took this person's money knowing they weren't going to catch anything. But at the same time, it's Lake Okeechobee. This is the way I put it. I said, it's still miserable. That water temp is I don't know what, as low as it's going to be all year. It's raining and it's still blowing 30, which means we can only fish like 2 spots that are going to be fishable. I don't know how it's going to be. If you guys want to cancel, it is fine and I will refund your because it's just not ideal. And it's not smart is really what it came down to. But I always say, but it is Lake Okeechobee. You just never know. All right. And they said, well, we're here and we want to fish. So let's just go. And at that time, like, again, now if it would have been blowing out of the northeast or the east, I wouldn't have gone. I would have said, listen, I'm sorry. And I've had it go both ways where people are pissed that I'm canceling. They're like, no, like, back on my lake, we fish in this all the time. Well, here's the deal. This isn't your lake. This will kill you. This isn't the farm pond. This isn't the 1,000-acre lake in Michigan. This is not fun. People die out here. It's a small ocean. And that's where, and I've had it happen both ways. That's what I mean. Like it's my call. Where they wanted to go. And now if this was been out of the east, I would have canceled. I wouldn't have given them the option. I would have said, we're just not going. And you might be mad at me, but it's for both of ours best interest. I have a wife and a son to come home to. So especially once Lakin was born, it really put it into my brain. Like if I don't feel safe going, that's it. Like it's not worth it. That might lose a customer. They might cuss me out. They might leave me a bad review. They might book someone else for the rest. That's fine. But I know I've seen what this lake can do. I've seen what happens when you go out when you feel like you shouldn't. So it's my career. And I'm my own boss. So when I don't feel it, I'll cancel a trip. But again, that day the wind was blowing out of the northwest, so it wasn't going to be rough. It was just you couldn't fish but a couple spots. And we went out there. We caught an 8.5 and a 10-2. We caught 2 absolute giants, and they were. So you never know is what I'm getting to. But again, if I cancel because if I tell you we're not going, just trust me that, or I shouldn't even say trust me. Trust your guide. I get a lot of customers on the boat. They're like, yeah, man, I used to fish with blank and blank, but I don't fish with him anymore because last year he canceled on me because it was blowing, it was supposed to be windy. And he had told me like, oh, well, the fish where the fish are, we're not going to be able to fish. And, he just didn't want to go. No, he's probably doing the right thing. And it might be both because he doesn't want to take you to where there's no fish and waste your time. And, or it could be, it's a safety hazard to go out there. So yeah, I don't know why I'm ranting on that, but that's just kind of how it works. It's kind of at the end of the day, it's kind of my call. And some people like that, some people don't, but that's just how this industry works. Whether you're fishing with me, whether you're fishing in the ocean, whether you're fishing with some guy, I mean, trust your guide is in this job to make money. Okay. We do it because we love it. But at the end of the day, this is how we pay our bills. This is how I afford the house. This is how I afford the boat. This is how I make money. So we want to go because we need to make money. That's what we're in this for. But when it comes to just wasting time and or not being safe, we got to do what we feel is right. So anyway, long story short, not so short. I canceled today. So now I desperately want to go fishing. Like I want to go film fishing content. And it's just, again, going back to me wasting time. Like I felt bad with my customer. I'd feel bad taking his money today because I know where there's a group of fish. You can't fish for them. So I'm not going to go lay up in stagnant water. At the same time, so we cancel. I'm off now. I want to go fishing. I could go fish out there, or I could go attempt to catch those fish, and there's nothing on the line because I don't care if I zero. But I can't. It's raining. It's going to mess the cameras up. There's ways around that. But at the end of the day, it's like I go out there and fish for 4 hours. I'm miserable. I'm wet, and I'm wasting time. I just know I would be. It's going to be blowing. It's going to be white capping where I need to fish, and you're just not going to be productive. So instead, I'm sitting here talking to you guys, streaming about going fishing. Um, I'm trying to figure out days where I can go and film and just, whether it's fish the lake. This is my favorite time to fish the lake. This is it. This is when I like throwing the frog and things. This is when the big ones get caught, and I just don't really have days to go. But I'm trying to figure out ways to get out there and go do it, and film stuff for you guys. Because I know you guys say you like the podcast and stuff, but I'm sure you would much rather see me out fishing than just sitting here talking to the camera. But hopefully that comes to fruition here. Something else I want to mention to you guys too, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm singling them out. This isn't anything that I've had happen recently. It's something I've just kind of sat on, and just, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. And again, I'm not picking on any individual. This is just something that not just with me, this is something I see on a lot of other guide boats, and things. And this is for your guys' benefit and safety, I guess you could say, why I'm going to say this. I want everyone to know what you're getting into when you book, again, with me or with anyone, a trip out here on Lake Okeechobee. And this kind of goes hand in hand with either a live bait shiner trip or artificial, but not as much with shiners, and you'll see why in here in a minute. How do I say this? When you come to fish Lake Okeechobee, I get a lot of people, like, they'll get on the lake and they'll say, this is nothing like I envisioned it. And I think that's weird, because all of Lake Okeechobee, its whole life and tournament coverage in YouTube videos. I mean, you guys see what I fish, but I guess it's different because you're just looking at it through a fisheye lens. You're not looking at the what it really is if you've never been. But I feel like the media, tournament coverage, and YouTube's videos and things do a very good job at broadcasting and showcasing what Lake Okeechobee is really like. But I hear it so much. This is nothing like I thought it would be. And they don't mean it in like a negative term or a positive term. I think it's just comes, and I don't know how to say it, but what it comes down to is you are fishing. And we're going to talk about artificial here, and you'll see why I'm talking about this. We are fishing in, essentially, it's an ocean, but we're not fishing in the ocean part. All we're doing is fishing the outer edge, which is a swamp. Okay, it's a marsh. It's been here since before mankind. It's a natural lake, and filled with grasses. Not as much grass, nearly as much grass there used to be, because they're doing their best to kill this place. But when it comes down to it, compared to a lot of other fisheries, thick grass, thick pads, Kissimmee grass, buggy whips, cattails, dollar pads. There's some hydrilla out there, not very much. I don't want to say it too loud so they don't go spray it. Pepper grass, penny mats, like thick stuff. And we don't fish 7'6", 7'11", 7'4", medium heavy action rods with 20-pound fluorocarbon or 50 to 65-pound braid. We don't do that because we feel cool doing it. We do it because you need it to be efficient and productive on this lake. The reason I'm saying any of this is because, especially in the wintertime, I get people that show up with their box of jerk baits, crankbaits. They want to throw a pop R. They want to drag a worm. And when don't get me wrong, there are times where you can do that. A pop R, you guys see. I mean, we catch a lot of big fish on a popper. A jerk bait, there are scenarios where you can do it, but for the most part, no. We're fishing in the thick stuff. Okay, and maybe it's not as thick to us locals, but the people that are coming from out of town, it's thick cover. The reason we're fishing in there is not because necessarily we want to, it's because that's where our fish live. And I get people all the time that show up, they book a trip with me, they buy a plane ticket, they get a hotel room, they go through the travel to get here, and then they tell me what we're going to do. Well, I make this crankbait at home, or I buy these crankbaits. This man down the street, Willie Nelson, makes them, and he hand paints them, and we just, I live on Lake of the Ozarks, or I hope I don't even know if I've had a customer from Lake of the Ozarks. I apologize if I do. I'm not singling you out. I'm just using this as an example. And it's great. It dives 22 feet on a 10-pound line, and this is what I like to use. Well, we don't have 22 feet of water on this lake, and a crankbait is not going to work very well in the back of Horse Island where these fish are spawning. And when I tell them that that's not going to work, not only do they not believe me, but they try to make it work, throwing it in the boat lanes, throwing it in the pad holes, and they just do nothing but bring up eelgrass and pad stems and get stuck all day. When I try to give them a swim jig, and it's almost like I tie it on a 7/6 rod, heavy braid, and I tell them throw it out and reel it in. Like, I could see people get like deflated. It's like they're not familiar with that, so they don't have confidence in it, and maybe they don't throw it at home. But just know, like, if you're coming to Okeechobee, you're gonna probably be fishing a little bit different than you do at home. On top of that, like, it's gonna, and I don't know what this is. Maybe it's because we cover more water here. And this, again, I'm not singling anyone out. I'm not picking up. I'm just letting people know kind of what to be in store for. Like, you can't, for the most part, like, when we're throwing that frog, okay, I get a lot of people that are like, I want to come down and throw a frog because we frog fish, and I want, like, you can't really sit down, drink a cocktail and throw the frog out there and kind of hop it around and let it sit. And it's very aggressive, very straining fishing out here. Like, and I see people deteriorate throughout their trips, especially if it's a 1 day, or especially if it's a 3 or 4 day trip. And especially this time of year when it gets hot. Okay. I tell people, like, hey, you might want to pace yourself. I know you've got me for a few days. Instead of running all 8-hour days, why don't we do 4s? Because you're not used to the humidity. You're not used to the heat. You're not used to this, how taxing this type of fishing is. I don't want you to wear yourself out. And I'm not singling anyone out, but I have people end up in the hospital. I'm not just saying this. I have people end up in the hospital before their trip's over or following their trip. I have people for 5 days that leave after 2, and they say, I didn't know. Not because they're not happy, it's because they're exhausted. When you watch like elk hunting, all right, when these people go on these elk hunting trips for 7 days, they don't just book the trip and go. They're in the gym, they're walking, all right, they're walking with packs on. They have to prepare for the trip. And that's kind of, I'm not comparing fishing Lake Okeechobee to elk, bow hunting elk, but it's different. The climate is different, the terrain is different, and the way you have to fish is different. If you're going down your home lake and you're fishing in clean water and you're throwing your weightless Senko around boat docks and pontoon boats and talking to the neighbor, and whatnot, that there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, I would enjoy that more anymore. But down here, to be efficient and be productive, a lot of times we got to cover water. All right. You can't just throw the frog out and work it in. It's almost like you got to throw that frog right to the edge of those buggy whips, right? That fish is going to be spawning on those buggies, those round reeds. Okay, let the frog sit. The wind's blowing in your face. You have to compensate for the wind to make sure that line lays right. Okay, now your line's laying in the water in the dollar pads, so your line's not just laying straight in open water. The wind's throwing a bow in it, and that line's going like this. It's getting caught under all the flaps of those dollar pads. So when you pop it, it's not popping right. Your frog's at 2:00. Your frog's at 10:00. Your rod's at 2:00, but your line's going from 10, 12, 4, because it's zigzagging through pads. Make sure your line's clear for when that fish hits. You could set the hook and your line's going to go straight to that frog. You're not going to pick up any pads. Don't want to swim jig. Compensate for the wind. Try to hold your rod tip up a little bit. That way your line's not laying in the pads, laying in the hydrilla. You're not getting bogged down. Flipping. It's not like a lot of places where people tell me like, yeah, we flip, but we'll only have like 8 things to flip in whatever lake you're on. Here, if we flip, we might be going down a grass line that's literally a mile long. You're going to be making a lot of flips. It's very taxing. It'll wear you out. So, it's tiring. It's tiring to fish here. It's not really like relaxing open water fishing. When you get a bite, okay, when you get that 8-pounder on that frog or that 6.5-pounder flushes that swim jig or that big easy, it's not just setting the hook and telling your buddy you got one. That's cool and all. You could do that if you want, but your landing ratio is going to be at about 5%. You have to hit them hard. You got to pull on them. You're not playing with them here. You're not because they're going to get you in everything that that's possible for them to get you in. And I have it all the time. Like I've had customers tell me at the end of their trip, I thought you Florida boys fished those big rods and big line and did those big hook sets because it was a pride and an ego thing, because it looks cool, because you feel cool doing it. But that's not what it is. We're setting the hook that hard with that stiff of a rod, not because it's the same 8-pound fish that lives where you guys live or where out of the state. But you're not setting that hook having to cut using that braided line. You have to set the hook hard enough to where it cuts all those pad stems, lays over those reeds that fish is mowing through, gets tight to that frog, and then moves those hooks 4 inches into that fish's crunchers, all in just one swing of the rod. You need line that's strong enough it's gonna be able to cut all that stuff, and then you need a rod stiff enough to where it's gonna not just load over and bend in half. It's gonna be stiff enough where it does all that grass cutting. You're almost using the tackle not necessarily for the fish down here, you're using it for the terrain you have to get the fish out of. And there's a reason why we fish what we fish down here and why we do what we do, because it's kind of what you need to do. Now, there are exceptions, right? Coming up here in the summertime, there are times where we're out on the outside edge, throwing a rattle trap, right? And catching a lot of big fish. You are in open water. We're throwing light line for us, 17-pound test. You could fight them. You don't have to horse them. You don't have to, right? You can do whatever you need to do with them. And that might be more like a fishery that people are accustomed to fishing. But when we're in the thick stuff, like it's and even when we are on, now here's the other thing, when we are on those outside edges playing with them like that, a lot of times it's a slick, calm, 103-degree, 100% humidity day, which is taxing in a different way. A lot of people come down here. They're excited to be in Florida. They're staying in West Palm Beach with the family. They're up in the town of Okeechobee, staying there. They're at Clewiston. They're at the Tiki Bar at Roland's. They're excited for their trip tomorrow. So they go, they drink 8 margaritas, 3 beers. They do 2 shots of whiskey just for good luck. And then you're out there in 100-degree weather the next day sweating, and you're not, I mean, people literally end up in the hospital. So what I'm saying is be prepared. Like, I see it on people. Like it's hot. Okay. I'm telling you, I don't, the famous last words is, oh, I'm used to the heat. I'm from blank. And they'll name, people literally tell me they live on a volcano their whole life, and they're used to the heat. And that's the first person that's going to go down. You get heat exhaustion, heat stroke out here very, very easily. It happens to us locals. So don't let your pride get to you. If you're feeling bad, or if you have a multiple day trip and it's hot, call it early. I don't ask any of you if you want to fish a 4, a 6, or an 8-hour day. We get out there and coming up here, honestly, I try to push everybody to do 4 hours. It's just the bites early, and it's over early this time of year. It gets boiling hot. Now, if you get a day like today where it's overcast, cloudy, some wind, we could fish an 8-hour day. But on those slick, calm, humid, nasty days, don't let your pride get to you. If you're hot and miserable, just call it at 4 hours. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And like I said, I just don't want anyone to get hurt, sick, sun. I mean, the list goes on and on. Top of that, again, if you're using my stuff, it's bigger rods. It's amazing how, and it's going to work flip opposite. Like, I'll get people from up north that come down, and they bring they'll bring a rod or two, and I'll say, listen, that 610 medium jerkbait rod with 10-pound fluorocarbon and a mega bass jerkbait on there is cool. And I know you guys light smallmouth up on those, but we're just not doing that today. We're going to be throwing a Gambler Big Easy, buzzing it over pads. And usually the way my trips work is, if we're doing that, I'll say, see these pads? They're going to be in these dollar pad fields, these needle grass fields, whatever, Kissimmee grass. You're going to throw the Big Easy out, hold your rod tip at 11 o'clock. That's going to do 2 things. It's going to, keep the nose of that bait up just a little bit so it doesn't bog down in that grass, hence you don't get caught up as much, hung up. And B, that way when that fish eats it, you're not in the hook set position. You got nowhere to go. You can't set the hook even if you wanted to. So it almost forces you to point the rod at the fish, let him take the bait, let him turn his head, get the bait down, reel down till you feel him, and crack him as hard as you can. When you hit him, just keep that line tight. Keeping that fish's momentum coming to you is going to increase your odds at the fish coming in the boat. But on top of that, keeping that line tight is going to enable that braid to cut the grass coming to you. If you keep it limp, that braid's just going to kind of lay the grass over a little bit. It's going to throw some slack in the line. The hook may very easily fall out of the fish's mouth, or it's going to let that fish's head turn. She's going to just swim around those pad stems. So you ties your line in a knot here around these pad stems, and now your fish has got 2 feet of slack line where she could just sit and head shake, and the hook's going to fall out of her mouth. So keep the line tight. Don't baby them. Pull them to the boat. You guys can tell I've said that before. That's when we're casting a wine and swim jigs and Big Easies in the grass, and they pick up that 7.6 heavy action rod with 65-pound braid on there. They're like, golly, it's a different feeling. And vice versa comes when I'm fishing with that. And then, I pick up this G Loomis NRX $600 rod, jerkbait rod. It's as light as a feather. It almost feels fake to me, but I'll be like, man, and I'll throw it in a boat trail or something for 5 or 6 casts, just because again, it's alien to me. We don't throw light stuff like that. Man, that's so cool. And then I put it down and pick that Big Easy rod back up, and it feels like you're fishing with a Penn Senator 4.0 saltwater fishing. It's a different deal. So that heavier, longer rod, when we're flipping, I can't tell you how many times I tell people, "Yeah, we're not going to flip the big weight. We're just going to flip a 3/4." And they look at me like, "I don't own a 3/4. My biggest weight in my box at home that I use for punching is a 1/2 ounce because they don't have the vegetation we have." It would blow your mind how instead of flipping a 7.3, a 7.6 medium heavy with a 5/8 ounce weight and a creature bait, how much more that 7.11, 7.6 rod, 65-pound braid and a 3/4 or a 1 ounce weight flipping for just an hour. They'll tell me, "Man, you'll feel it." And I know, because when I first started flipping, I went through it. It's so much different, and it's more taxing. So just something to know. Like, we're going to be in thick stuff. You're going to have to pull them. You're probably going to need to be standing up. Like, I don't have butt seats on my boat. I am going to get them, but you're just, you gotta be at least a butt seat. You kind of gotta be standing. If you need to sit, I've got my big bucket seats by the console. You could sit and drag a worm, and that's fine. But to be very efficient and productive, it's almost standing up, getting up on that fish, getting that fish up out of the grass, and it's taxing. It is. And again, I'm not singling anyone out because people I feel like they don't know. Um, I've had people ask me at all. I've had people get out on the lake and tell me, "Well, here's the deal, Cody. I just got done fishing my lake 2 days ago before I got on the plane to get here." And they're on boat docks. They're on boat docks at home. And I really think that's what we need to target today is, I brought a couple of wacky rigs because that's what we used at home to skip under docks. And, that's the deal. So, I mean, I think that's what we should do. And I tell them, if you can find me a boat dock, we don't have boat docks on Lake Okeechobee. There's not one dock on Okeechobee. Mind blown. Well, where do you guys fish in the summertime? There's no shade. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they have preconceived notions of what the lake is like before they get here. It is unlike any other lake in the country. There is no other lake like this one. There isn't. Not even Kissimmee, not Estapoga. These fish do completely different things. And I really feel like I get customers on my boat that they really think that I have no idea what I'm talking about. And it's not their fault. It's because everything is so opposite. Like, I'll tell them we're going to go look for fish spawning. And they'll literally, I'm not getting home. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're watching this. I've had customers in the boat, 2 people, guy in the front, guy in the back. And I've seen customers pull their phone out and text. And I'm not looking at your phone, but I am. Spawning in February, ? Rolling eye emoji. To the guy in the back of the boat. I watched it. It happened not to that extent, but it happened twice this season. Like, they think I'm an idiot that our fish are spawning. And then, but what's funny here is I can't go to the bank like a lot of people can and say, "Look, see, he's spawning right there on a bed. See that 8-pounder laying there?" You can't do that because you very rarely can look at our fish on a bed. So come, had it that same group where they'll start asking me questions like, why would a bass be on a bed in February? Well, our fish spawn. There's only 2 months out of the year that our fish don't spawn. And it's just so hard for them to comprehend. And then when I say, "All right, you see that stick right there? That single round reed? Just throw that burner worm up there. When it gets to it, kill it and let it lay." And, they'll catch a 1-pounder. And I say, "All right, that's the male. Squeeze him. They'll probably see he's peeing all over you." And they look at each other like, "Holy shit." And I say, "Throw back in there. Someone will get the female." Guy in the back of the boat throws over there. I see his line jump, sets the hook, comes back with no tail. Throw it back over there again. She's walking off with it. Set the hook airball. Throw it back over there again. Get the bite. Set the hook. It's a 7-pounder. And they'll straight up tell me after we catch a few fish, "Man, I'm not going to lie. I thought you were full of shit. I didn't think you had no idea what you're talking about." Our fish do not do traditional things here. They like I said, they go out when they should come in. They come in when they should go out. They I truly think because this lake gets so much pressure every year that I think the fish are evolving to do different things. Me and Nick were talking about it. Donnie Bass said it about a month ago, and I really think he's right. Me and Donnie Bass go back and forth on Facebook. Everyone knows that. Like, but the guy's a hammer. He's a stick. He freaking catches them, right? And I like Donnie. Me and him just always, it's like a joke. Everyone tags us to like for us to argue about stuff. But something he said, which, and it could be for a number of reasons, is we don't really have any more like pre and post spawn fish. It's like when they come in, you can melee them, like crush them. And then where it used to be, you could kind of follow them out. It's almost like you can't do that now, but there's a couple of, you can, but what he's saying is there's so much less grass now that, you used to run to the back of the shoal and see them spawning, and you catch them on a big easy and a prop bait, right? And then they'd start leaving, and you can go to the mid-range stuff and catch them on their way out. Then you go to the outside edge. Now that's not happening because a lot of that grass is gone. That is true, but I still think it is happening. But because all that submerged grass is gone, and because we've had 18 feet of water in the damn lake, that once they come from right here to right here, this is chocolate soup and swells and rolling water. So I think those fish are still kind of using it, but you can't fish it. So you're eliminating those fish, and then on top of that, when they are back here and they are catchable, instead of there being 5 boats here, 5 boats here, 10 boats up here, 20 boats down here, spread out, those areas that are fishable are just beat. So those fish run in, they try to spawn, they're getting the hell beaten out of them. People do catch them, and then they just get the hell out of Dodge. And I think they're leaving a lot quicker. Whereas they used to come in, spawn, they kind of linger. I don't think they're lingering anymore. I think they're changing their patterns. And I said it. I think I said it last time. There was a lot of Elite Series guys that were telling us like, I know the locals say the fish live out in the lake, and they come in to spawn and go back out, but that's not true. These fish are just always in the grass. They just don't bite. There are, and that's the hardest part of my job. That is it right there. There are times where they're there and will not bite. These fish are the moodiest fish in the country. There's times where I know my boat is sitting on 30 pounds. I know it. I know they're sitting there. They just have not turned on. But there's also times where I think they just left. And that just comes from time on the water and experience. But at those times where I know those fish are sitting there, but I have a paying customer in my boat, and we haven't had a bite in an hour and a half, how do I convince that customer that they're there? How do I not come off as lazy? How do I not come off as wanting to not waste gas running around? How do I come off that I'm not just being lazy? That's the hardest part, because I know if I was in a tournament situation, I'd sit there for 8 hours. I know they're there. The signs are there. The bait's there. I saw a guy catch a big one over here. One boiled my customer's frog, just didn't eat it. Boiled it for 25 feet. Like, was thinking about it. I flipped in a reed and had a bite, set the hook in, like little things. Like, and I'm like, man, they're here. They're just not biting. And I know if they do go to bite, this customer is going to have the best fishing day he's ever had in his life. But it's very hard to convince. Now, some people get it. Some people say, Cody, if you're telling me they're here, I believe it. I mean, they're here. We could sit here as long as you think. It's your call, bud. Because if I was here by myself, I wouldn't even have found this place, and I won't know where I'd go. Then there's other people that I could tell want to move. They'll say, man, have you got anywhere else we can go try? And, part of me, it's just like, man, like I do, but I know you could break your PB 4 times sitting here when these fish go to bite. And that just comes from time on the water, and that comes in people trusting your guide. Um, it's it's a hard decision, and that it's hard to convince people of otherwise. But like I said, there's scenarios, but there definitely is a theme this season where these fish have come and gone faster than I've ever seen it happen. Um, Seriously, like, I mean, Chris Sherling won the ABA with 29 pounds, and then the next weekend he literally had two fish in the Toyota series. But what's crazier than that was Saturday was the ABA. He had 29 pounds. Caught him for, shook him off for 2 days before that. Sunday did not go into that area, but I know someone that did, and they only had one good bite. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they just flat out didn't. They were gone. I mean, 3 days gone. And that's happened twice in areas since the Toyota series. So these fish are moving a lot. Right now, kind of getting into a report real quick, wrapping up here. I mean, these fish are in transition. I say it all the time, and Kelly had to remind me of it the other day. He said, now don't forget, it's that time of year where I got to give you a pep talk where the lake is going to be difficult for a week or a few weeks because everything's changing. It goes right into summer. Not only that, where the fish are going, you just can't fish there yet. Like, most of these fish are on the outside edge. I don't know if I already went over this, but I really think most of these fish have pulled out due to dropping water, rising water temps, and the bait. Everyone's asking me about the shad spawn. The shad spawn's happening right now. You just can't fish most of the time where it's happening. It's on the outside. The water's mud. There's 2 foot, 3 foot rollers out there. But the fish are there. Okay. And that's what's making it difficult for us guides is the wind hasn't laid down. Now, if this wind will lay down for 3 days, you can get out there and fish and catch fish, I'm sure. But it's the way the conditions have lined up, it's making following the fish very difficult on this lake lately. So, I mean, if I was giving anyone a report, there's fish south, there's fish north, there's fish mid-lake now, there's fish all over, there's fish in the Harney Pond area, there's fish all over. I would just try to focus more towards the outside, and that's for numbers and bigger fish. Everything's, to me, is late this year, which is weird because we had a very strong winter in the very beginning, back-to-back very cold fronts, but then it got hot. Everything should be early. Like I said, I really thought this Toyota series was going to be outside edge, flipping, shad spawn dominated, and it wasn't due to wind and stuff. But I thought right after it was going to fire off. We're still not seeing bluegill activity in April. May is usually the heart of it, but April, usually you see some brim moving up on the beds. People are catching fish post-spawn, bass, post-spawn, chasing bluegill around. No one I've talked to seen it, and I haven't seen it with my own eyes yet either. So it's almost like everything's late, which I thought everything was going to be early. But things are changing right now. Everything's in transition. Fish are leaving areas to go to set up on other areas. I really think they're more concentrated on moving than they are on feeding right now. So if you have a good day, don't think you're going to go back there tomorrow and catch them. That's what I'm saying. You got to move with them, and you can only move as far as Mother Nature is allowing it. So that's about it. Hopefully this wind lays down. I know I've got some peacock bass trips coming up. Anyone who's interested in that, let me know. I got to go try and play with those things. And hopefully this wind lays down enough to where I can actually go out and film some true fishing content for you guys. Because not only do I want to put it out, but I just want to go fishing. I want to go film something. I want to the Toyota series. I put up that little highlight reel, but I just didn't get to even enjoy that. I dug myself in such a hole the first day that I was just trying to catch as much as I could the second day. And I had fun, but didn't get to really, talk to the camera or just film a relaxed video. But that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Again, I'm going to say it here. If you're booking any trips between now and September, I'd be prepared, especially if you've never been, 4-hour, 6-hour trips. 8-hour days are long. It's very hot. Very hot. And on top of the very hot weather and uncomfortable weather, the fishing Can be great, but tends to get slow after about 11:30, noon o'clock. Okay. But with that being said, the morning bites are fun. A lot of times we get a lot of numbers, fish and shad, spawn fish, spinnerbait, white swim jig, schooling fish with a rattle trap. And then once that sun gets up, that kind of dies off. Any of you that want to go flipping, it's a great way to get bit flipping or throwing a frog if the bluegills show up. So anyone who's into that, let me know. Shoot me a text to book a trip. Lots of people, I know I am a pain to get a hold of. My relatives will tell you the same when it comes to phone calls. I hate talking on the phone, but on top of that, if you text me, it saves in my phone. And like yesterday, my guy for today, I was out, I was running around, I was doing errands. I had to go get an ingrown hair cut out of my neck, which was fun. And I didn't want to wait too late to reach out to my customer. I was able to type the date into my search box of my text messages. There was my customer right there. I didn't have to wait till I got home, which might have been 7:30 at night to reach out to him. I texted him, hey, might be not sure if we want to go tomorrow, and was able to let him know earlier than later. Okay, so if you text me, it all saves in my phone. There's no errors. So just reach out to me via text. I can reach out to you. We can get your date in the book, and then I can give you a call once I have time, get the deposit, answer any questions you have, but at least your date is secured quicker. So that's it. Appreciate you guys watching. Book those trips. Go visit Mike at fishing headquarters on the north end of the lake, and come down and fish this awesome lake. It's tough right now, but it's tough every year this time of year. But I think it's fixing to get good with the water dropping the way it is. Hopefully, she continues to drop. It's going to help the fishing and just help the longevity of this lake. So appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully, the next video is me actually out on the water. But either way, I will see you guys on the next one.